Hey guys, Matt here again. I want to take you over to some of my later dropping Dunstan trees now that have been crossed with some later dropping varieties to give me some later dropping times. Here's one that is still very much hanging on to the chestnuts. One that I'm still experimenting with. It's getting ready to start dropping, but I'm not really sure of the drop times yet. I'm hoping that it will still hang on about another week, or at least another week or two to before it starts really dropping. I notice there's already a couple burrs on the ground here, but like I said, I'm hoping that before it starts dropping its main load of burrs, it waits for another week to 10 days or so. Again, this was a kind of a experiment that I was doing on this tree here by crossing it with another later dropping tree that I have, to see if I could get a tree that would drop its burrs on into October and early November, or hopefully early November. I think that was more of a hope. If I could just get it into mid October, I think that'd be nice. But anyway, as you can tell, these burrs are they're starting to turn brown, but they're not close yet, I don't think. Try to focus on them. There we go. See if I can focus in on them. I don't know, they might be. Maybe another week or so, I don't know. See if I can get a better view of them here. Obviously, the smaller ones here did not get pollinated, or only have one nut in them. This is a young tree. This is also its first year to have nuts, and the thing is loaded. This is a cross between just your run-of-the-mill Chinese chestnut and what I'm calling a hybrid Buck IV. What I mean by that is that the Buck IV part came from a seed of a Buck IV and whatever it was crossed with initially. What I mean by that is that I was able to obtain some Buck IV nuts, or some nuts from a Buck IV tree. And if you're not familiar with the Buck IV trees, that was a variety that was developed by the Auburn University for its later drop times, and it's currently being sold by the Wildlife Group. I was able to obtain some nuts from one of the Buck IV trees that's growing at the Wildlife Group. But the caveat to that is is that those buck IV trees are also growing in amongst some other trees that are buck III trees and some other Chinese trees. So you don't know what tree pollinated what. So another buck IV could have pollinated it, or another type of Chinese tree could have pollinated it. So I'm calling these buck IV hybrids. This is a buck IV tree that I grew from seed. Then I crossed it with another Chinese tree that I noticed also had a later dropping time when it started producing. So and I hand pollinated this tree. So once once everything was hand pollinated, I took the blooms off of another tree I'm going to show you, and hand pollinated everything. And so anyway, that's how I did it. It may not have been scientifically the way that someone would go about doing it, but that's the way that that's the way that I did it. So anyway, you know, I know some people would have put baggies and all kinds of stuff over the blooms and kept them isolated from other pollen in the air and all that good stuff. Well, I didn't have all that stuff to do that with, but I feel like at least some of these nuts will be the correct hybrid nuts that I'm shooting for. But what I'm really after is this buck IV tree right here having the right drop time that I'm after in my yard, producing nuts at the right time. So where I can harvest those nuts and hopefully reproduce that in the deer woods. If that makes any sense. Sorry I'm so long-winded, but anyway, looks like I got two nuts on the ground here. It's like this one has something in it. I suspect this one may be empty or only have one small one. I'll throw them in there with my pecans. So we'll go over here to another buck IV. This one had the top die out of it. And this one I've noticed, here's one on the ground here, has a little earlier drop time. Its nuts have been dropping for about 2 weeks now. And the top died out of it, so I've been thinking about doing some top work on it during the winter time and changing it to something else. Actually, it's been having some issues with some of the about four or five of the husks or the nuts have been splitting open. I may have removed all of them. I don't know if there's any. Here's one right here that I don't know. Well, no, that one's okay. Actually, that one needs to be pulled, to be honest with you. Just hadn't fallen yet. Looks pretty good, actually. But what I'm talking about is the burr will actually split open and the nut will be the nuts will be green inside. I've been told that it's an issue some trees have, and some trees are worse than the others. So anyway, take y'all over to another tree that I have. This is also a Buck IV hybrid, and this is one that I crossed with another tree for its later drop times. And again, these nuts are showing no signs of opening yet. This tree is its first year of producing, so it did not set very many nuts to begin with. But this tree has not dropped any yet. It's got a few right here, one right here, a couple up in the very top right there, but this tree has not dropped any yet, so I'm hopeful they hang on at least a couple of more weeks. Then this tree will be set. Be awesome. Let me get over here. Maybe you can get some good light on it. Sun's going down. So this tree is 6 years old. It's just now producing nuts, but look how big it is. I mean, it's every bit of 20 foot tall. This thing is huge. Here's one right here. The nut right there. Or a burr, I should say. There's a couple right there. I mean, it said a few for its first year. Good looking tree. Good looking tree. I expect it to set a fairly good load of burrs next year. Here's another tree that I'm fairly proud of. It's another Buck IV hybrid, and it's just as big as the other one. It's every bit of 20 foot tall or so at least. It's just as tall as the other one that I showed you. I don't know if I told you about the other one or not, but it was grown from seed as well as this one. It's got some burrs up in the very top as well. This was the one last year. I don't know if you watched some of my videos. It had one burr in it last year that produced one nut. This year it set a cluster of burrs right here on the end and a few more up in the top. So we're slowly improving, and the tree's looking good. I mean, it's bushing out and it's looking real good. So I've got right in this area here, I've got 4 of the Buck IV hybrids that I was able to grow from nuts, and then I've crossed them with another Chinese late dropper that produced pollen for the first time, which is right over here. And I was able to take some of the pollen and then cross it, use it, and cross it with these trees right here, and you know, that's what we got. So anyway, now hopefully, that don't affect the drop times of these trees specifically, but these nuts that are on these trees, when they are planted and are grown and they start producing nuts, that's what it will affect, obviously, them. So when they start growing and they start producing nuts, that's what will affect their drop times, you know. So hopefully these nuts that are on these trees, they'll have even better drop times, or their drop times will be even longer. That's the idea anyway. So if these trees wait until, let's say, 2 weeks from now, which would be mid-October, if this is the 1st of October, let's say, you know, by crossing these trees with another late dropper tree, let's say that pushes these the nuts that are on these trees out another week. So that pushes us into the 3rd week of October. So we're looking at the start of chestnut season for those trees, 3rd week of October. When you got a large tree, it's going to start dropping 3rd week of October. Well, it'll take a large tree at least a couple of weeks to drop all of its nuts, 2 to 3 weeks even. So you're looking at prime hunting season, the end of bow season, the start of rifle season. That's deer love chestnuts. You're looking at the perfect spot to hunt. That's the idea anyway, guys. So that's the late droppers.